Hello, everyone, and welcome to The Impossible. I'm your co host, Austin, and today is a solo episode, and I wanted to discuss the term resiliency, and specifically how Leila Hormozzi had put it of resiliency is the ability to return back to baseline. So if you are experiencing a moment or an episode of turbulence while traveling or on the pursuit down your path, what ability do you have? How quickly are you able to return back to the baseline of which you are, back into focus, back in the groove, whatever you want to call it? Your ability to return back to that and to sort of, I see it as like a frequency sort of kind of picture. That's what I picture is like a frequency chart or line, for like a mic, to where you have a bunch of fluctuations above and below, and then how quickly can you bring that back down to a nice solid line. That's just how my mind pictures it. But the ability to be able to return back to baseline after an episode of something unexpected, something expected, but the severity was turned up to where it became maybe unexpected. Your ability to return back to baseline is going to determine how successful you are, obviously, going down the road. If you're able to you have that crosswind coming and hitting your vehicle while you're driving down the road, how are you able to keep it in the lane? How are you able to return back and that was a hefty wind, but I'm back in the lane and I'm still driving. How quickly and how efficiently you're able to do that. And one example that I find to be extremely to be very much a what's the word? An example of, there's another fancy word I could use there, but what reminds me of where I had learned a very, very big lesson in resiliency and working on my ability to return back to baseline was certainly in a moment of vulnerability, in a moment of my life potentially being lost. Now, in the circumstances, that would have been a gross, I would say maybe mishandling of the situation. If I would have, croaked after this, excuse me. But that didn't happen because of the setting that I was in. But it was certainly a life or death scenario for me. It was in the time that I had started the preparatory chemo phase or introductory chemo phase for the bone marrow transplant. So this is September-ish, October of 2024. And having learned that I relapsed again and knowing that I had to go and take this bone marrow biopsy, that was already somewhat of a freight train that had passed through and kind of clipped me. and then to learn that I needed to go in and prep the body with harsh chemo before that, this introductory phase was very difficult to take. Just because we had done plenty of research on bone marrow transplants, knowing that it was going to be 6 days in a row of the BEAM regimen, BEAM, of just this ancient, destructive chemo. That's meant to the dosages and the time period of which you're taking this in it's severe enough and toxic enough that it shuts down your bone marrow's ability to produce stem cells. Thus why it's called a bone marrow transplant, or maybe you'll hear it called a stem cell transplant, because you are, before you go in for that portion, you have about a week and a half you're put on this medication that basically like signals your bone marrow to produce a lot of stem cells. They go in and they collect it, kind of like through a dialysis machine, and then once they collect enough cells, their target is 5 million cells, and you have like 3 or 4 days to collect that, to then prepare you for the 6 days in a row of this chemo. The chemo, again, it's enough that it will stunt your bone marrow's ability to produce stem cells. And I don't know if it's like completely zero or if it's just stunts it enough to where your body's not going to be able to keep up. But I mean, the amount of chemo that you go through has a very, very, very high likely chance of killing you if you did not have the stem cell infusion. I think it's infusion since it's mine. I don't know. One of those two. The stem cells that are introduced into you after the 6 days of chemo, that is what pretty much saves you. But that's not the life or death scenario that I had faced. That's one of them. That's one of the two that it was supposed to be the only one. Sorry, that was kind of strange. It looked like a teenager was just kind of sitting on top of a car while I was driving down the road. Suburbia. Anyways, that was the only life and death scenario that I had to somewhat battle, even though it was very much in a controlled circumstance. It could have gone wild, and that may have been an opportunity for me to learn some resiliency, but it wasn't, thankfully. But there was a moment for me that I did. There was a moment that was unexpected. Again, this was in September of 2024 with the introductory phase of chemo. The exact drugs I forget. There, I know there was. There were chemotherapeutic agents as well as immunotherapeutic agents that were part of this kind of put together. And I remember the day vividly. It was actually the day that I got to have our main host, the one and only Dr. Matthew Hill. He was with me that day, and we went into the Cleveland Clinic just like any other day for treatment that I had experienced, in the years recent. And we go into get into the clinic. We get checked in. We get sat down in the lobby of which you wait for treatment, and go into the room. Again, white walls, white cabinets. It's just miserable. But then what's nice about the majority of the rooms is that they're on the exterior wall. And so what I had was what you have in each room is floor to somewhat almost the ceiling windows. And those windows go out to a courtyard with a bunch of, I think they're a bunch of just smaller maple trees, like silver maples that you see that you'll see alongside the road in a smaller town or something, or at least where I grew up. That's what they used. So very, trees that don't grow too big, ones that don't mind a little bit of trimming, and they're nice to have. Obviously and I think that's where, now that I come to think about it, I wonder if that's where my newfound love of the color green comes from. It kind of makes sense, because this treatment room that I'm describing is the one that I had seen for 7 months in 2022. I'd seen for 2 months for an introductory chemo phase for my Houston relapse. I was there in Cleveland for 2 months for that, and then as well for the bone marrow transplant. 2.5, 3-ish months total of time spent there. I guess that makes sense. But it's just, it's a courtyard, a very large courtyard, like football field, if not a little bit bigger, just lined with trees and grass, and a nice walking area that they have there beside the cancer clinic, the Taussig Cancer Center. And staring out the window as I normally did all those days, and it was in the beginning, it was already a bit of a rough day, knowing that, again, This is the start of another round of treatment. But having Matt there was certainly reassuring, and it was nice, good company, even if I wasn't really in the mood to talk during some of that time, which would come to be somewhat true. I was very, very thankful and very, very grateful that he was the one that was there. And so I'm sitting in the chair, this gray blob of a chair. It's insane. The void of color that they have there, unreal. But staring outside, staring the trees, it was a phenomenal sort of setup, at least to be able to see that outside the window. And they go to deliver the first chemotherapeutic agent, and all goes well. It's being delivered, and about an hour, I think it was. And then they set up, and then they get me ready for the second. And that's where we ran into problems. So the second drug was not, it was a chemo. It was doxorubicin, but it was a liposomal doxorubicin. Doxorubicin is the chemotherapeutic agent that heavily took over Matt during his treatment with Ewing sarcoma. Doxorubicin is something that I had some experience with in my first round of treatment. But now I have liposomal doxorubicin, which somehow it's a bit more targeted, I think, with the liposomal function. Something about like taking it to fat soluble state and some other things that I really don't understand. But that's the extent that I'm going to share here. But it's just in a different form, but still doxorubicin. And they start the delivery. The delivery is supposed to be just an hour. Well, about a minute in, and all of a sudden, my throat, my esophagus, my airways to my lungs start to collapse. And I'm having an anaphylactic reaction. That was not fun and very unexpected. I never reacted up until this point to a chemotherapeutic drug. It's only been to amend an anti-nausea medication, and that was back in 2022. But that feeling of having your airways closed without your consent is something that I did not and I do not forget. And I immediately look at Matt, because it's a feeling of where your heart starts to race, at least in my experience. Your heart starts to race and it like just catches on fire. And then all of a sudden you start taking shallower and shallower breaths. And it's not fun. And he knew immediately, because he was actually there in 2022 when I first started treatment and found out that I was allergic to amend. He was there with my mother there in Belpre. And so like I looked at him, and evidently my face was enough to tell. I didn't have to say a word, and he ran over and hit the big red button. And the room was flooded with 8 to 10 people. And yeah, that was not the greatest of experiences. Not in the slightest. They immediately shut off the medication, or the delivery system at least, and pulled that specific tube out from my IV. The IV was going to my chest. Yeah, and that's the other thing, is that I had the 3-headed kind of like inlet put into my body. It's my other scar that I have here in my chest. So this is something that's going directly into my heart. So it's going into the main source of the pool of your blood, and that's why it's pretty rapid. It's intentions, the awareness that you are made to its intentions. It's quite quite quick. And so they pulled that plug out, and they immediately hooked me up with IV Benadryl, and that stuff it'll knock you out like that, especially the IV, because they went directly into my plug in there, and which is necessary, and they saved me, which I'm very, very thankful for. And not that they wouldn't have, again, that's not what I'm insinuating, but like I was having a very difficult moment in that time, and they got me set up with the Benadryl, and everything was fine. And so I'm sitting there really, really kind of like drugged up at this point. IV Benadryl's really doing its thing, and I am kind of in and out of consciousness. I think it's about 20 to 30 minutes pass, and my oncologist walks in, Dr. Allison Winters, and she sits down next to me in the chair, and at this point, right before she walked in, I was talking to Matt, and I was letting him know my distaste with that chemotherapeutic agent, and that I had no intentions on continuing it. And he said, "Oh, yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense. They'll find a different drug. They'll probably recommend some other chemotherapeutic agent, and to kind of to obviously replace that one for the regimen, and we'll go from there." Dr. Winter walked in, and she sat down very calmly beside me, and again, I had this confidence of like I get to tell her that I'm not going to take this again. That was not the case. She politely but directly informs me that it is her recommendation that I continue this medication. That the chemotherapeutic agent that just tried to take my life, I need to try it again, take all of the remaining dose, which is like 98% of the bag that was hanging above me, and then for 3 more sessions after this, continue it. Now, my immediate reaction is, "Oh, so you want me to die?" No, my immediate reaction was, that thing just tried to kill me. Why would you ask me to continue taking it? Why can't we replace it with something else? I let that kind of go through my head for a second, and then I calmly responded to her and saying, "Well, I had some problems with that. Why can't we just replace it with something else? Why can't we take it out of the regimen?" And she calmly tells me that it's going to be part of, it's a cog in the machine. It's a gear within, it's a gear within the motor. Like this is something that needs to happen. You need to take this drug. There's a reason why that the numbers are so great for this particular combination of drugs in this phase of introductory chemo and immunotherapeutic agents, leading into a bone marrow transplant, into an autologous bone marrow transplant. There's a reason why the numbers are so great, and it's because of this combination here. I really want you to take the liposomal doxorubicin, and what we will do is pump you up with a little bit of Benadryl, a little more Benadryl than what they normally do, and you will take it over. It'll be delivered at a half rate, so it'll be delivered over twice the amount of time. So instead of 1 hour delivery, it'll be a 2 hour delivery. And like that, you adding an hour and about an hour and a half, obviously, with all the fixings and the dry, all the changes of medications and stuff like that. Like, you're gonna add an hour and a half, 2 hours to my day because you want me to take this drug, you want me to continue taking this chemotherapeutic agent that just tried to kill me. We're going to take it at a slower rate, and you're going to have me pumped with Benadryl, which means that for this, 3.5 hour period, 4 hour period, basically, I'm going to be just a loopy, semi-conscious being. And then come to find out that that's going to kind of ruin the rest of the day. Thankful that I wasn't driving some of those, or all of those days. So you're asking me to continue this medication. Allison says yes. Are you really asking me to continue this medication? Yes, Austin. She's sitting to my right. I look off to my left to the courtyard. And the person that I had to transform into in that moment Ooh. Apologies. I haven't haven't put myself in the chair for a while. And on that day specifically. The thought process of which I've taken here of recent for trying to determine what is going on in my mind and what is required to unfold within those thoughts in dealing with a situation like this. Here recently, I have been looking back into Nietzsche and his passive versus active nihilism. A nihilism of which we all face at some point, but basically throughout our lives, the portions of which we are, conscious and aware, which is all the time. And I won't get into why he thinks that we're all facing that, but in the inevitability of us facing that, you have those two choices. You have the passive or the active. The passive nihilism is to succumb to the pressure and ultimately choose the more difficult path, which was a little bit of a, what would you call that? Juxtaposition. I figured that'd be the easy way out. Like when I was reading up on this and talking it over with Claude, like I saw this moment of, okay, well, that sounds like the easy way out. That sounds like the easier path to take when experiencing some sort of adversity, is to succumb to the pressure, to choose the comfortable route, to say, okay, I'm just not going to do anything positive with the situation. I'm going to just let it happen. I'm going to, as Paulo Nietzsche said, I'm just going to slide rather than decide. I'm just going to slide through this. I'm taking that route of which yields me no outcome that is worthwhile to pursue. And that is a path of which I have taken in the past many of times through different periods of adversity or just with life in general. And I've struggled with that mightily when I try to reconcile and when I try to recall and then reconcile with those moments in my life, I do struggle mightily with kind of permitting any sense of reconciliation, but ultimately acceptance and any acceptance of an apology for having gone through that and for having taken that route. Because, and this is where that sort of switch happened, was I realized that that was the more difficult path to take. Because there is no outcome on that path of which yields something positive in the future, of which yields anything, again, worth pursuing. You're not taking that adversity and that challenge and putting it on your shoulders and bearing that burden. And that's something, having realized that I need to take for the future, that's where I struggle to forgive myself of the past and having not chosen the active nihilistic approach. And the active nihilistic approach is where you bear that burden. You take that weight, you put it on your shoulders, and you continue to rock up that mountain. You continue to walk down that path. You sort of take a flamethrower, to what lays in your way on that path that has sort of compiled and collected from the past. What would the nonsensical and unnecessary baggage from the past of which you don't need to carry into the future. A lot of people allow that to just kind of swarm them and engulf them in this sort of, I definitely refer to it in my essays as this sort of like tar pit that just really, it gets sludgy and it's so much work. It's so much work to be able to get out of that a lot of people just stop. And I mean, to a point, you can't blame them. It's difficult. There's so much that weighs on you and holds you back that a reaction of, I really don't feel like I'm getting out of this. It's understandable, and I empathize with it heavily. Because there were moments during my different treatments, during the different regimens, that I felt that way. Like the first time I was in Cleveland and really seeing the effects of chemotherapy, of chemo, of the loss of hair, the loss of appetite, the loss of energy, the sores in the back of the throat, the paleness of the skin. And I mean, at least I had some freckles, so there was some color going on, but like I'm already very white, and so like it just the paleness really struck me hard. And so I've looked into the mirror with disgust and a sort of like unenergetic angst. And so when you choose to pursue that path of active nihilism, when you choose to be active with your reaction towards that adversity, driving towards it, not succumbing to it, not bowing to it, but driving towards it and breaking through it, there's a lot that you have to clean up. There's a lot that you have to destroy. You've probably heard from many people, including Riss, in terms of, in order to move into the future with some type of positivity and momentum, you have to burn off the past. You have to burn off what weighs you down that is just unnecessary. And that's what the active nihilism approach sort of gets at. But it's also the active choice to not only bear that burden, but to pursue and drive down that path of which has outcomes that are favorable, outcomes that are not only positive for yourself. And that's where us here at Impossible Performance, we aren't just stopping at, okay, my health, my journey coming out of this cancer treatment is that my health has gotten better. I'm getting in much better shape. I'm feeling better. I'm eating better. The mental side of me is becoming a bit more clear and very much more manageable in terms of the molding that I'm doing, molding of that clay to create this more disciplined individual. The emotional side, I'm able to curb that and engage with this act of resiliency that I'm discussing today. I'm able to get back to the baseline super, super quick because of moments like this. That is not just for me. The sort of blooming of self through this path is not just for me to reap the benefits of. It is for those closer. It's for my family. It's for my loved ones. It's for my friends. It's for the community, and ultimately anybody of which can take something positive from this. That's what taking this path ultimately will yield. It is not just to better thyself. It is to better thyself and those around you. To be a positive part, not only within your own life, but to those around you. And that is where, if you've heard the term Übermensch comes from, the overman, the individual that takes on life, takes on those burdens, bears those burdens, throws them onto the shoulders, and drives towards that adversity, drives towards those challenges, breaks through them, and ultimately not only benefits self, but benefits those around them. And that's sort of a almost 2 years down the road kind of synopsis of what was going through my head in that moment of staring out into the courtyard with Dr. Winters asking me to continue on a medication that just tried to take my life. I'm staring out to the courtyard, seeing again, I believe they're silver maple. I don't know. They're definitely maple trees. I know that. And they're just slowly and gently moving in the wind as I sit there and stare at them. And I'm very, very, very thankful and grateful that she held fast in that moment. I knew she was going to, but of course, in the moment, I'm like, please just say, you know what, Austin? No, everything will be fine. We'll just go ahead and no, she didn't do that. She didn't do that, and she knew that I wasn't going to fold. I'm very, very certain of that, and that's the reason why. Well, that, and also I needed to take that regimen. Ultimately, I'm here, 19, 20 months into remission. So evidently, it's worked. But I'm staring out to those trees preparing for a pretty cold and miserable winter in Northeast Ohio. And what I had to burn down, what I had to flay off of my being, off of my soul, off of my body at that point, in that moment of what was weighing me down. I had to do that pretty quick. I had to perform that autologous auto surgery on self. And I looked back at her and I said, okay. Okay. I will continue the liposomal doxorubicin. I will continue the drug that just constricted my airways without my consent. and I will continue on this path towards in my life, the ultimate adversity, a cancer that had came back a third time, even more powerful. The most powerful I had faced it. Like a mountain, casting a shadow over myself with the sun beyond it, and I couldn't see it. And what I had to do was say, okay, I'm going to face that mountain. I'm going to climb it. It's going to be difficult. Let me shed some weight off. Let me focus my sight. Let me find a path up that mountain, and I will climb it, and I will reach to the peak. I will get to see the sun again. So resiliency is your ability to return back to baseline. When you're facing a moment of adversity, when you're facing a moment of unexpected or expected adversity, a challenge, and it doesn't seem to go your way, you're going to have a reaction to it. And that reaction is, it's going to happen. For those who are ultimate resiliency monsters, sure, it's quick, but it still happens. You're still human. Your emotions are not a bad thing to experience. You need to experience them. You need to feel them because it's based upon previous experiences of which you have emotions in the first place. So that's the guideline. That's the sort of guideline, the baseline of past experiences coming out and saying, hey, we're going to react to this because we're going to react to this happening now because that's what's happened in the past, and it unfolded like this, and so like we need to be careful, and all of that running through your head. Let it happen for the moment. Absorb that. Take that in. That's not, to a point, it's not going to be nonsensical. It's not going to be irrational. There will be a lot of rationality within that. Within that sort of, potentially flight or fight scenario. Something that's extremely, very, I don't know if you need to put something in before the word primal, but it's primal, those reactions. And it's just evolved over time into something that's a lot more complex. And so it's not anything that you need to suppress. You don't need to take those emotions and go, no, that's no. I just told you that constriction of the airways is not a good thing. So why would you constrict those emotions that you're feeling? Resiliency is your ability to return back to baseline, not through cutting and slashing and hacking and all of this stuff. It's more of you have an ability to correct the steering wheel and to correct that car going down the road with some crosswinds coming in, winds coming across the vehicle. Like you have the ability to return that to. You have the ability. You're in control, and you have to remember that. You have to remind yourself that. So feel that wind hitting across. Like you have those jerks. You have like, okay, well, that's pretty intense. Yeah, hold on. Well, this is how I've gotten through it before. Take a calm approach to it. Feel the emotions. This is not the purported modern Stoic approach of a sort of like a cutoff of emotions, like a numbing of emotions. You're not numbing your emotions. You're very aware that they're there. You are very aware that they are there. But what you're doing is you're not allowing them to be in control of you in that situation. You were in control of the situation. Feel those emotions and return back to baseline. Return back to the mission. I could have sat there and absolutely lost it why would you ask me to continue this medication that just attempted to take my my life? Really? Really? Are you going to do that? Are you going to sit there and ask me that? How dare you ask me that? That's how I could have reacted. And it would have been understandable. It was a very intense moment. A very intense half hour of attack to Benadryl, knocking me out, to kind of coming back to consciousness and being like, oh, I don't want to do that again. And then 5 minutes later, my oncologist walks in and says, you're going to have to do that again. But it's going to take more time, and you're going to have to still be on a lot of Benadryl, but you'll get through it. Okay. Okay. So thank you for tuning in. Thank you for watching. Please hit that subscribe button. If you're on YouTube, it's free and it helps us out. And it helps us to get these messages and all the guests that we have, the incredible guests that we have on this podcast. That's what helps us reach out to more and more viewers, to make more and more impressions upon people's feeds. And if you're on Spotify or Apple, give us a follow, give us a rating on there as well. It'd be fantastic. And I do want to tell you real quick about the Impossible app, a place of where you're able to deal with those emotions, a place that you're able to track your progress in forming that resiliency within self, as well as training and nutrition. You also have mindset, and you have gratitude journals, and you have just daily goals, and then goals, beyond whatever interval you want, but also just like the tracking of that. It's an incredible feature that we're currently in the beta phase for, and the link will be in the the link will be in the description. And if you hop on our Instagrams, the link's in the bio. There we go. And if you go to our website, impossibleperformance.com, we have more information about the app there. If you want to get signed up, Matt will be able to walk you through all of that. And it really is an incredible, what can we put into your hands to help you form that culture, and to help you form that impossible self that we've been talking about for so long. We can now have it, in an app on your phone, and it tracks the whole person, the 4 domains of performance: physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual. And then, fitness, nutrition, all of that on top of it. But that's the focus of the app, is the whole person. And especially Matt, but we've all been working diligently and very hard on this app, and we are very excited to bring it to you. And it's a tool of which you're going to be able to use to help track that resiliency, to see how well you're doing, and so much more. So again, thank you for watching. Thank you for tuning in, because at Impossible Performance, we're striving to build a global culture of strength, fostering a spirit of growth in constant pursuit of the impossible. Take care, and as always, be impossible.